following worship every Sunday, we have fellowship time in the fellowship hall. Well, today is the first Sunday of the month. That means that we also have snacks. Oh, and I know that there will be pound cake slices and grapes and other good things to eat. Oh, wait. Don't remember any of this. Don't forget about this. Don't remember any of it, okay? Okay, now that I've planted that in your minds, how easy is it going to be to forget? Well, that seems to be exactly what our scripture from Isaiah is saying to us today. Look at Isaiah. I want us to look at Isaiah again because the images in here are so bold. And it really does tell us, do not remember. Just like you're not going to remember about, what is there at fellowship time today? Yeah, right. You're not going to remember that. Okay. Isaiah. From the contemporary English version, it starts out with an image. Think about what image this is. For those who would have heard this over 2,000 years ago, the image may have been a little bit easier to pick out, but I think you're going to get what this image is. I am the one who cut a path through the mighty ocean. I sent an army to chase you with chariots and horses. Now they lie dead, unable to move. What's that an image of? Oh, and you're allowed to talk. What's that an image of? What's the scripture reference? The parting of the sea, yes. When God's people were leaving Egypt, the Egyptians were chasing them through the Red Sea, and the sea parted, and they went through. And then, when the Egyptian soldiers, when the chariots entered, the water came back through and washed them away. The next image is one of, they are like an oil lamp with the flame snuffed out. Most of us don't use oil lamps. I think if we would translate this to 2019, we'd probably say they are like a car that was not filled with gas before they left on a long trip. It's that sense of preparation, that sense of you need to prepare. And the Egyptians, they had prepared wrong, and their oil lamps became empty because they were following the wrong God. And then God says, forget about what happened a long time ago. Don't think about the past. Okay, how many of you, after you're told don't think about it, are able to stop thinking about it? But God is going on to say, I am creating something new. Something new. I have put roads in the deserts, streams in thirsty lands. Even the wild animals will honor me. So, So God is doing something new. Think about who was listening to this scripture the first time it was told. The people listening, they were the people who were now the slaves in Babylon. You see, they talked about the slaves who were in Egypt and how Moses came and led them out of Egypt. And now this story is being told to the slaves who were in Babylon. God's people again in slavery in Babylon. The slaves. They're probably looking around saying, okay, where's Moses? God used Moses before to get us out of here. Where's the Moses? How are we going to get out of this slavery? Oh, we're still not out of this slavery. Has God forgotten us? Maybe God is no longer faithful. If there's no more Moseses in this world, well, what are we going to do? Maybe we're just going to be tired and exhausted all our lives and live forever in slavery. Does that ever sound like what you do? We remember that God acted boldly way back then with Noah and saving Noah's family from the flood. And we remember with Abraham and Sarah that God acted when they had no children and they were old. And God said, your descendants will be like the stars in the sky. And Sarah laughed and said, that's impossible. But it was possible. Or might you be like the people in Babylon, where they hear that they are still in slavery and wondered why God wasn't acting. And here's the response from God. Forget the way I worked in the past. Here's the new thing. Now, most of us don't recognize what the Jewish laws were at that time. When it talks about a jackal, at that time, a jackal, a member of the dog family, was an animal that fed on other meat. It hunted in pairs and in packs, and it was often associated with the ruining of the desert. As a scavenger, it was unclean. Now, in the Old Testament, at that time, being unclean means you did not get close to the places that were holy. But then there's another animal mentioned, the ostrich, a large bird that symbolized cruelty. It was a cruel animal noted in Job, and the meat is unclean because it too scavenged meat. It was unclean. And did you catch that God is saying, these animals that are unclean, I am going to include those who were previously considered unclean. Those are going to praise and worship me. That is something new. Those who we say are unclean are going to praise and worship our God. This changes the Jewish laws of clean and unclean. That's most of the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament, if you want to look. But the question still is, what does that mean for today? The command comes straight to us today to look around, because God's not going to keep acting the same way that God acted in the past. God will always be faithful. But just like you don't act the same way you did as a teenager, doesn't mean you're not the same person. Look around, or you will miss seeing God in the present. It's Isaiah 43 that compels us to view our experience of God's grace in the past as a springboard to the future that can happen without fear, but with expectation that God will be there. You know, as I looked at this scripture, it was powerful for me to be preaching this on the day when my retirement is first public. When I'm saying, remember, God will do a new thing. A new thing. I think that's valid for you and me. A new thing. God's actions won't be the same from one era to the next. God's action in this congregation won't be the same from one era to the next. And God's action within each of you won't be the same. One may see a vision, and another may be more gifted to work out a plan. But do remember that big story that there is a God who has been with us from the beginning. But don't get so hooked into how God acted that one time in Egypt that you forget to look for how God is acting now. Open your eyes wide, for God's actions will keep happening. Even when we are caught up in our own concerns and our own exhaustion and our own fears, God makes a way. Look around. Don't expect the same actions as what appeared in previous generations, but see the God who always wants a new thing. Amen.